The Great Patriotic War. Many people had to go through the Great Patriotic War. Many didn't come back at all. Others came back crippled. Some went missing. And some became heroes. The world of crime has always existed, including in the USSR during the war years. Some criminals went to the front. Others did not change their notions and did not fight. There were also those who heroically fought, received awards, and even became a real hero. And after war, unable to find a place for themselves, plunged to the bottom of the criminal world. This affected and Vasily Filipovich Grigin. His fate was so bright and colorful as it was tragic. Vasily Grigin was a hero, USSR, and after the service had numerous problems with the law. By the way, the award this is the highest honor of the USSR, and it was extremely difficult to get it, only for special outstanding feats. A total of 12,777 people received this award. After the war, many were deprived of the title of hero for various crimes. Sometimes there was political persecution, but more often than not, the awardees were guilty themselves. Childhood and war. Vasily Grigin was born in 1921 in May in Altai in Talmensky district at the station Ozerki. His family was an ordinary peasant family. He received an education and further worked together with his parents. As his fellow countrymen recalled, the guy did not stand out in any special way. Vasily was an ordinary, calm and quiet guy. Before the war, he was not engaged in anything criminal and earned a penny by honest labor. In 1940, like many of Vasily's peers, he joined the Red Army. Naturally, no one at that time and did not realize that a big war and a lot of grief awaited them all. Grigin went to war almost immediately after its announcement, 23rd June 1941. He has such a record in his documents. In the first time, the front life greatly disturbed Vasily. He took part in battles on the 2nd and 3rd Ukrainian fronts, as well as the Western, Stepnoy and Southwestern fronts. He received wounds and various awards. In 1944, Vasily Grigin became already a sergeant and commander of a rifle squad. Then he especially distinguished himself during the forcing of the Danube River. His feat was even repeatedly described in different sources. There was a battle at the settlement of Draj. The terrain was extremely difficult, swampy. The troops were conducting a very heavy offensive. On the flooded land was difficult, and the army suffered heavy losses. The Germans used the water obstacle for their own purposes and successfully held the defense, shooting every scrap of land. It was clear that the army would not be able to pass through here anytime soon. Vasily Grigin was assigned the task of entering the rear of the enemy from the left flank together with his men. There it was necessary to start a fight, but only as a diversionary maneuver. More than 2 kilometers, Grigin and his squad shaved in the water, carefully camouflaged so that the Germans would not notice. Having entered the rear of the enemy's defense, they successfully started a battle, sowed panic, and were able to destroy many German soldiers who were on the dam at that time. The enemy was forced to divert from the main Soviet troops and engage Grigin's squad. The plan succeeded, but it was very difficult for Vasily himself and his men, as now the full might of the German defense was directed only at them. As a result of the clash, only Grigin and one more of his soldiers were left. Some German soldiers managed to get close to the sergeant and started pelting him with grenades. They say that Grigin, right on the fly, caught these grenades, which did not have time to burst, and threw them back at the enemy. Then Grigin's department was able to destroy about 30 German soldiers. Well, and what is more important, the Soviet troops in this section of the front were able to advance to the dam and capture it. And this is not rumors and memories. It was stated in official documents. It becomes clear that Grigin and his squad went through a real hell. The sergeant miraculously survived and lost his comrades, but was able to fulfill the combat task. In 1945, on the 24th of March, Sergeant Vasily Grigin received the highest award, the title of Hero of the Soviet Union for his courage and heroism. Also, because of military actions, Grigin received a head wound as a result of which he lost an eye. Vasya came home with a bandage on his head, covering an empty eye socket. This injury and the changed psyche of Vasily after the war greatly affected his future fate. He used to be a quiet and calm guy, but became very aggressive, irascible, sharp. Even the smallest trifle drove him into a wild rage. Life after the war. It can already be understood that at the civilian, Grigin had certain problems with socialization and he needed rehabilitation. But at that time, rehabilitation was out of the question, especially in the countryside and rural areas. If you are alive and relatively healthy, then work and live on. At first, it even seemed that Hero had settled down quite normally. He had a job and a family. But in 1947, everything went to hell when Vasily decided to visit his relatives. Local women began to complain to him that their paramedic was taking bribes for granting sick leave, and he took them unscrupulously. Even if you are sick, you still pay. After hearing this, Grigin got angry and went to the paramedic to punish him. When he burst into the room, he grabbed the paramedic, beat him severely, and dragged him to the lake to drown him. The locals who were watching all this came to their senses and managed to fend off the paramedic. But Vasily was prosecuted for malicious hooliganism. In the autumn of the same year, he received his first sentence, 4 years. He served less time, and after his release, he again started to fight against skurnikovism. Bribe takers were called skurniki at that time. As a result of misconduct, Grigin again received a sentence of 1.8 years. Serious charges. In 1950, Vasily Grigin already committed a more serious offense than before, rape. This time, he received a sentence of 10 years. But the worst was in the petition of law enforcement agencies to deprive him of all awards, including taking away the star of the hero of the Soviet Union. Vasya was lucky again, and he was able to get out on parole. The thing is that after Joseph Stalin's death, there was the so-called Beriev amnesty, which allowed many criminals to go free. It seems that Vasily did not want to stay free and lead a peaceful life. He started committing new crimes and getting convictions. In 1958, he committed theft. In 1962, hooliganism. In 1963, infliction of grievous bodily harm and malicious hooliganism. And already in 1964, Vasily Filipovich Grigin lost his titles, including the highest award of the USSR. By the way, for the lack of an eye he was compared to Kutuzov, for which he received his nickname. He also had another nickname, Hero. Many historians are inclined to believe that he broke the law only to find himself behind bars again. Vasily had no one at liberty. His relatives and close friends turned their backs on him. But in prison, everything is simple and clear, as on the front. In total, Vasily Grigin received about 38 years of imprisonment. The last term, which he received, was announced in 1983. He came out in 1986, being already very ill. He was attached to the hospital, where he lived until his death in 1991. Vasily Grigin was buried in a common grave, since he was unclaimed. Nobody needed him. The story about this man shows how much people change after the horrors of war. Before the war, he was a quiet and calm guy who would not hurt a fly, but after the bloody battles and wounds, like a cornered beast who throws himself at everyone on occasion and without it. After World War II, unfortunately, there were a lot of such people. Nevertheless, many people believe that Grigin was treated unfairly and not supported. But it is worth noting that there were a lot of frontline soldiers, and all of them were in equal conditions, and only a very small part of them got involved with crime. At the same time, the state did not take away the awards for a long time, hoping that Vasily will come to his senses, but he preferred another way.